conclave with the National Communication Council. The 6:15 news hits the airwaves in a split second with anchorman Ntarike Divine Ramsey Jr.
Thanks sincerely once again for your company as we take our first steps into the weekend this weekend. Now, he is the traditional ruler of the Boassa village in Buea, that's in the southwest. He also serves with the Cameroonian army, popularly known as Chief Moja Moja. He has several times come under the verbal fire of human rights defenders who accuse him of molesting people he believes to be sympathetic with calls for secession. Now, the Buea-based Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa says it is time for the authorities to nip his actions in the bud. Here's Ambo Gladys, rather.
The recent release by the Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa cited 7 acts of torture inflicted on some young men between the months of April, May, June, July, August, and October 2022 by Chief Ewume John, commonly known as Chief Moja Moja of Boassa village in Buea in the southwest region. He is said to have physically and mentally tortured and arbitrarily detained 11 men in Buea. According to the human rights organization, the chief, who is also a military man, has on several occasions publicly humiliated and tortured unarmed civilians whom he describes as separatist fighters or those who share separatist ideologies. The report reveals that Chief Moja Moja records the acts of torture on video and then circulates them on social media. His last victims were arrested November 4, 2022, tortured in his palace before being handed over to gendarmerie officers. The human rights group discloses in the report that Chief Moja Moja accused the 2 boys of being separatist fighters from Iso village in the northwest region who have been paid to kill him by Baba Dampolo, a business guru with whom he has a land dispute. The boys were released after no incriminating evidence were found against them. The Center for Human Rights and Democracy in Africa has therefore called on the Cameroon government to open investigations into all reported acts of torture and for the victims who have suffered injuries to have their medical and legal costs covered.
Now let's take you over to the capital, Yaoundé, where we gather that a 32-year-old man is currently under police custody for allegedly assaulting and raping his very own daughter. Reports say after beating the kid up into the point of unconsciousness, she was rushed to hospital where unfortunately she gave up the ghost. The trickling reports now indicate that the man, the 32-year-old man who's actually the father of the dead kid, has vamoosed. Beatrice Ngamo.
The alarm call from the Yaoundé Gynecological Obstetric and Pediatric Hospital in Gozo to the 18th District Public Security Police Station announces the suspicious death of an 8-year-old girl who came with an injured head but upon examination gave up the ghost. The medical officials, however, continued their investigation and the findings shocking. The Class 3 primary school pupil has been victim of several forms of sexual abuse. Suspicions, especially as the father who brought her to hospital, has taken to his heels. The police opened investigation and the father was nabbed. More inquiries revealed the father to be the supposed criminal. The neighbors testify of his continual acts of beating as they always intervene to rescue child from his assaults. Conjugal and sexual violence, his attitude, who had sent his wife away. She left with a child who then was just 1 year, but he came and took charge from the sister-in-law. Shocked to her marrow, the mother could never imagine her child was undergoing such agony this young.
Advise our fellow population that we are living in a very complicated society today. In our neighborhood, we should always denounce who regularly brutalize their children. Equally, as parents, we should try as much as possible to avoid putting our children in the center of our marital issues. Let's be friends towards our children. Let's observe them. Let's control them, monitor them.
The supposed torturer and rapist accepts he is the author of the crime. The torture, he said, was to frighten child. He will kill her if she exposes his devilish acts. From the police cell, they said rapist will be taken to the competent court for justice to take its course.
Now, observers agree without much ado that corruption is not only endemic, but has found very fertile grounds across Cameroon over the years. And in spite of the dissuasive and repressive measures installed over time by the authorities, the cankerworm only appears to be digging deep inroads into almost every fabric of national life. Now, the National Anti-Corruption Commission is reporting that for the year 2021 alone, Cameroon lost 44 billion CFA francs to corruption. Beatrice Ngamo once again.
According to investigation carried out by CONAC, as well as decision from the Budgetary and Finance Disciplinary Council and the Special Criminal Court, corruption and related offences continue to cause enormous damage to our country. The total amount, about 44 billion, far from the 17 billion in 2020, a great hindrance to development efforts in the country. The 2021 Anti-Corruption Status Report demonstrates that acts and practices were also sanctioned through administrative and court rulings. Administrative sanctions were imposed on 865 public officials, ranging from warnings to dismissal.
Through rapid intervention action in reaction to report of extortion of funds at the Edia prison, usurpation of qualification of chairman of CONAC, extortion of detainee at the public prosecutor's office of the military court of Bafoussam, use of fake certificate at the General Delegation for National Security.
On the allegation of misappropriation of funds intended for the fight against COVID-19, the report says CONAC did not deem it necessary to carry out investigation, given that the audit bench has already carried on audit thereto. Needs to step up the fight, reiterates the chairman of National Anti-Corruption Commission, Dieudonné Masigam. As prospects, they need to increase resources for the institution and structures in this corruption fight, enactment of an anti-corruption law, among others. The National Anti-Corruption Commission is a consultative body with no legal arm for repression.
Now, this November 11th, France and French communities across the world are commemorating the 104th anniversary of the Armistice of 1918. In Douala, Di Maureen says the day was marked by the laying of wreaths on the fringes of monuments of two fallen French soldiers. A report.
These two monuments in the hearts of Bonanjo, Douala, one a renowned French military general, Philippe Leclerc, the other a French military soldier, recalls their sacrifices during war times. General Leclerc is remembered for rallying troops in the 1940s in France's then colonies to fight German occupation and many more. By laying wreaths, this November 11 remains a symbol of those memories.
Celebration not only of the First World War memory, but we celebrate today also all the freedom fighters in the world, especially during the Second World War, the signification of our celebration of Marshal Leclerc. But also today we have freedom fighters, especially in Cameroon, who fight against jihadism and separatism. And
the ceremony is officiated by the French consul in Douala and the governor of the Littoral region, flanked by other administrative authorities and French and Cameroonian soldiers. Even students had a role to play. The solemnity of the event included a hymn to the deaf. The celebration, which holds every November 11, remains engraved in the minds of many.
Now let's crisscross the country back to Yaoundé, where the November session of Parliament has kicked off with MPs voicing the calls for the government to take urgent measures to check the rise in prices of basic commodities, as well as arrest the socio-political crisis springing up and down across the country. They spoke to our reporter Hyacinth Chia.
The November parliamentary session is crucial, with many things at stake within the national territory. And in his opening statement this Friday, November 11, the Right Honourable Speaker, Kavaye Yege Jibril, underlined key issues like the recent fuel scarcity and the persistence of the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions, and the lawmakers urged the powers that be to use the right approach to meet sustainable solutions.
The efforts of government, they are commendable, but the other aspects of handling a crisis, because we are already now only looking at the consequences of the crisis, let us look deeply into the very base of this crisis. The Anglophone crisis came from where? How can we nip in the bud so that it doesn't come again?
With the session principally to examine the 2023 finance law, the MPs expressed their expectations, capitalizing on the roads network and basic needs for Cameroonian citizens.
We look forward to seeing the entire nation regenerated in terms of electricity and water.
We can process what we can produce in this country. We don't need to import anything in Cameroon. So the way Cameroonians are suffering, you need to go down to the market. There's no way for people to put food on their table. It's a matter of restructuring our agricultural sector.
Present at the opening of this November budgetary session were members of government, led by the Prime Minister, Head of Government, Joseph John Gote. Activities to better the digital situation of the country also announced on this first day of the ordinary session.
We'll be visiting Buea to see how we can give a push to the youth who are involved in ICT.
And with barely 9 days to the start of the 2022 Qatar World Cup, the members of the lower house of Parliament pour out their blessings on the indomitable lions of Cameroon.
Now, the African Synergies Against AIDS and Sufferings will clock 20 years of existence come November 20. The non-governmental organization founded by Cameroon's First Lady Chantal Biya is still waxing strong despite the many challenges it has so far surmounted. Beatrice Ngamo spoke to its executive secretary and now reports.
The determination of Cameroon's First Lady Chantal Biya that saw the participation of African First Ladies last November 15 to 16, 2002 in Yaoundé, the birth of the African Synergy Against AIDS and Suffering.
One of the best achievements is that African Synergy is still existing. The First Lady took part, they are taking part in the fight against HIV/AIDS, and it's very satisfactory to see that. And nobody could believe that 20 years after, African Synergy will be still existing.
It has been able not only to curb stigmatization, discrimination and deaths, but pushed fear to the background.
You're almost scared of it. People live with it. It's a chronic disease, as high blood pressure. Seropositive women, pregnant, they now have chance to give birth to safe babies.
Today, about 80% of persons living with HIV and AIDS are under treatment.
20 years ago, it was not possible, but today they live under treatment. And you live under treatment, you live normally.
The target of African First Ladies like Chantal Biya, women and the youths, the AIDS-free holiday campaign has impacted many of them.
They do listen, and there are very positive modifications in their behavior. You give them to relatives, but the message of the First Lady of Cameroon, Mrs. Chantal Biya, is that please stop. Don't do it, don't go in. But now, if you can't stop, protect yourself.
Apart from HIV and AIDS, the First Ladies are also interested in other pandemics and epidemics like COVID-19.
Good being of populations concern the First Ladies too, and they played their own part, and they are still playing their own part in the fight against coronavirus.
20 years and the adventure continue. Amidst challenges, a common phenomenon today.
Now in Douala, surveyors and adjusters are grappling with the complexities of their profession, which usually require high doses of technical expertise as they ponder ways of boosting their professional experience. They say laying claims to damages is another complex issue, and they say they must be able to draw the line between who is a technical expert and who is a consultant. Kejan Henry Atembe.
Property damage and personal injury claims to determine how much an insurance company has to pay for loss is a very challenging task.
The role of technical experts in Cameroon, as prescribed in the law, is to be able to render their service to the public, particularly insurance companies who are most often faced with cases of damages that require high technical training and expertise.
These members of the Cameroon Chamber of Surveyors and Adjusters are helping people technical experts recently sworn into the corps to acquire more knowledge on how to proceed with technical analysis and risk assessment.
Basically, we are engineers, but a technical expert is somebody who has the obligation to go again into revising his know-how. Technically, he must possess good qualification, an engineer by profession, academic. He must have adequate training and experience on the field.
Producing an expert technical report after on-site assessment requires knowledge and experience in a particular domain. They provide expertise to assessment team before and after work done. This is to mitigate risk and in case of an accident, evaluate the damages incurred by parties.
And on the eve of major sports events like the 2022 World Cup due debut in Qatar in the coming days, competition by broadcasters and cable TV distributors to win over viewers can get stiff and sometimes really messy, with some of them indulging in image piracy as a means of gluing their clients to their screens. The chairman of the National Communication Council, meanwhile, on a working trip to Douala this Friday, has warned that any cable distributors or television broadcasters indulging in image piracy will meet severe sanctions. Here's a report from Gladys Ambo.
From the comfort of their homes, Cameroonians have to watch this 22nd edition of the World Cup competition unperturbed. The National Communication Council has urged cable television distributors to put aside conflict of interest and permit Cameroonians watch the competition hitch-free. Members of the National Communications Council and cable television distributors met in Douala, November 11, 2022.
For the sake of social peace, that all activities around cable distribution should cease for this period of the World Cup and then allow Cameroonians to enjoy the competition, and also encouraged local distributors able to sign contracts with the big distributors.
The cable television distributors have also been encouraged to exercise their activities in legality to avoid issues.
Canal Plus has assured us that even though they don't have the exclusive rights of the World Cup in Cameroon, they would help.
We will try our best to provide the better service and the product.
The National Communications Council equally revealed government's efforts to ensure load shed is suspended during the World Cup to permit Cameroonians enjoy the competition.
And talking about the World Cup, Mark Chouamou comes up right after me with the debrief and his ongoing lead-up to the competition. There's more news in French, of course, at 1950 with Alain Ghislain Kanga. Stay safe all through the weekend, and let's meet back here the same time on Monday. Bye-bye.